Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, friends from around the world. Welcome to Sales Enablement Society's Global All Hands Call. Today's call is being recorded. For those of you joining for the first time, we extend a really big welcome. I'm Michael Labate, and I'm excited to be your host today. I've been involved in this organization since 2017, and I've witnessed our global community playing a really important role in the development of the sales enablement profession, which is what we're all about. I've also witnessed the impact SES has made to the career development of many of our members and colleagues. It's the reason I remain an active volunteer. In fact, as a nonprofit organization, volunteering is at the core of our success. Today, 8,000 members across 59 chapters in 29 countries come together with one mission in mind, and that is to elevate the role of sales enablement in organizations worldwide. And just to put some perspective around that growth, since our last call in March, many of you have attended, more than 700 new members have joined us, including new chapters across 8 countries. We have a terrific agenda lined up for you today. We're going to kick off with board announcements. You'll hear from Nicole O'Brien and our newest executive board member, Bill Ball. Bill is a director of learning and development at DICES, and Nicole is vice president of marketing and sales enablement at Tico and Zavari. Our special guest today joins us, Peter Ostrow. He's the vice president and principal analyst at Forrester Serious Decisions. He's focused on topics really looking at sales enablement strategies and best practices. Peter will share his thoughts on what we're learning in 2020 that can help prepare us for success into next year. He'll be joined by Juliana Stancampiano, president of the Sales Enablement Society, and she's also CEO at Oxygen. After that, Lisa Scotto will take the mic as our member spotlight. She's going to share tips and tricks that can help drive attendance and engagement for virtual events, such an important topic, especially today given the global health crisis and the pivot to virtual and digital behavior. Lisa is Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at the American Association of Advertising Agencies, also known as the 4As. Juliana will welcome our featured success story speaker, Tanya, Aisley, Manager of Learning and Development for Global Sales Enablement at Panasonic Avionics Corporation. Really excited to have Tanya share her professional growth and a look at how she's extending sales enablement in her enterprise. We're also excited to welcome Bryan, Ehrenfreund, and Chip Day, our global chapter liaisons, to the call to share the latest on chapter development. How do you launch a chapter? Who's who are the chapter presidents? How do you get involved in one nearest your location? So Bryan and Chip will cover those important areas. So really exciting to get started here. Let's hand it over to Nicole O'Brien. Nicole, take it away.
Our SES podcast, which is really gaining a lot of footing, and love to have members check it out, share, and really know what's going on with the podcast. It's called Stories from the Trenches, and Paul Butterfield is the host. He's an longtime SES member, and he recently took the helm and has made many improvements in the podcast since taking it over. So the improvements are he's added a voiceover by another SES member who's also a professional announcer. So it's got a nice little kick with music and announcement in the beginning. And he also has put this podcast on 3 public platforms now. So I get it on Spotify, which is pretty cool to be able to have it just delivered to me. And it's also on Apple and Google. So check it out, follow it, and you'll get the updates as they come forward. They're all indexed and searchable. He's got monthly episodes with a couple of special editions, thrown in, geared towards current events. His latest episode 11 dropped on June 19th, and it was with Roderick Jefferson, and they were talking about, driving diversity in corporations and in sales enablement. So that was a very interesting conversation. And the episode before that was actually June 16th. So he's done 2 back to back. And that was Chris Sargent. And he really talked about how do you implement, measure adoption within global sales teams, remote global sales teams. So the sales methodology, how do you deliver it, get adoption, and really be able to effectively measure that? I think it's really important today, since a lot of us have gone virtual and are struggling with that pivot. So I would check those 2 out. Those are the most recent ones. But let's build our subscribers for this. SES members, go and subscribe to it, please. Also, post the monthly episodes. We have them up on our LinkedIn page when they become available. But please share and promote this out and promote it on your own social channels. And that would be, I'm asked to share the link to these episodes. We can share the link to the episodes. You can go on our LinkedIn, the Sales Enablement Society LinkedIn page, and that link will be there. We're linking the episodes as they become available, so you should be able to go in and get all of them. Anyway, so that would be fabulous if everybody would listen, share, and really help boost this podcast. Paul Butterfield has done a great deal of work on this and has had tremendous success so far, and I'd love to help him make it even more successful. So after these 2 updates, I'm going to turn it over to Bill Ball and have him give you rest of the details on other important things that are happening. Bill?
Thanks, Nicole. Before I jump into what I want to share, I just want to shout out what was on the first slide in our webinar today. That's we're now up to 8,000 members, 59 chapters, 29 countries. As somebody who's been a part of this organization since 2016, that's just incredible. So I want to call that out because those numbers are just daunting to me. It's amazing, and it speaks to the growth of our profession. I'm going to share 2 things with you guys today. First is our conference. We surveyed our members and we heard you loud and clear. If you haven't heard, we are going to be all virtual, and it still is going to be on the planned dates in September. One of the things that we're excited about is we've had the luxury of attending other conferences with some of our partners this year, and using some of those experiences is going to help us inform, what we do to continue making a great experience for our members. There's also an opportunity for us to take a more global approach. So we're excited about that, involving, our 59 chapters in 29 countries. And a couple of things, housekeeping things and important things of note. For our partners, final touches are being put on the partnership plan. And that's due out to be, that's due out next week or after the 4th. For all of our practitioners, we've got a call for speakers, a highly detailed, highly directional, highly intentional call for speakers on the website. So please check that out if you're a practitioner and you want to present. The cutoff for that is June 30th, so next week. So get on it. We have a conference committee that's been meeting bi-weekly for some time, so we're rolling up our sleeves. We pivoted to virtual. We are dedicated to making an amazing experience for you guys. My second update is on our webinars. For those of you who attended our last webinar a few weeks ago with DSG, thank you. It was arguably one of our best ever. We had well over 30% attendance. For those of you who know average conversion on webinars, sometimes it's anywhere from 15 to 20 to 25 max, so over 30 is excellent. We had amazing engagement and questions from our members throughout the webinar, so thanks for that. We're seeing that we can make these experiences a little different than your average webinar, because when we're working directly with our partners, we're able to establish a theme that really targets what's in it for our members. So we're seeing that many of our partners didn't know that they could work with a society in this way. And the fact is, it's one of the best ways to, have us engage with our members on a topic that's important to everybody. And that's part of our mission as a society. So we're super excited about the webinars. So please look for more of those. We're going to have our next one with corporate visions. That's to be announced very soon at near the end of the month. They're going to be talking about remote selling, but before you say everybody's talking about remote selling, it's corporate visions. They're going to be talking to you about it in a way that most people aren't talking about it. We're 3 months into this thing. We're not talking about cameras and lighting anymore. There are bigger things afoot as most of us have to tag on to this remote selling. We also have upcoming webinars with ClearSlide and Seismic. If you are a partner, or if you know somebody that wants to engage with the society on a webinar, we are going to do a handful more throughout the year. So please reach out to me or anybody on the board. Thanks. Juliana?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Bill. So I get the honor of introducing Peter Ostrow. As Michael said earlier, he's the VP and Principal Analyst of Sales Enablement Strategies for Forrester Serious Decisions. And we're going to dive right in. I feel lucky to be able to be on this call and hear from Peter about what 2020 is teaching us, because I think it's teaching us a lot personally. And he's going to lead us through a few of the lessons that they have been seeing and some of the patterns. And I love the fact that we get to see and hear about this through a lens of data. But I know Peter's going to ask you to engage first. So Peter, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Sure. Thanks, Juliana. So even if we think about our first lesson, which is planning matters, most of the time, those of us who are aware of best practices in change management notice things happening in advance sometimes, and then very often it takes us months or quarters or years to identify what sometimes seems like global change. This was, boom, overnight. So what I'd like our guests on the call today to do is go to the chat and use one word, just one word, to describe the feelings that you had on March 12th, 13th, whatever that day was when everything started changing rapidly for sales enablement in your organization. What's one word to describe your emotions? Denial, angst, fear, whirlwind. Go. I like that. Here we go.
This is fantastic and also sad all at the same time.
It is. You're seeing, right. Most of these fall, oh my gosh, Peter Klein. Most of these fall into two categories except for his. One, and those of us who have been through acquisitions and big changes in M&As, we know what happens, right? Is one part of your reaction is, OMG, what's going to happen to me? And then the other part is, okay, what am I going to do about this? Most of us get to that second state. It's just a matter of how quickly we do so. So, I guess, Juliana, this first lesson about planning is, while we still have to figure out where we're going to go with this, you're right. I think we're beyond the cameras and the lighting, and now we're about the sales motions and how we as enablers can support those as they change so dramatically. What's the next big thing that's going to happen? Are we going to be more prepared for something that changes in our business lives or personal lives the next time around? And that's kind of the first lesson that I feel we've seen a lot of our organizations, our customers learning from this scenario. What about you? Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to that point on the glacial change versus immediate crisis, it's also interesting, as we have been talking to clients, is that it really pushed people to make the decisions that maybe they hadn't been making.
Agreed. And the decisions are, there's no playbook for this, right? We know that in military and in government, hopefully, there are these playbooks for emergencies, and we didn't have those. Something that we're seeing a lot is the executives got together every day for their scrum. Okay, what's going on? Are we going to change dramatically? Or are we going to change radically? What's going on with our cash? And I was actually kind of hopeful that a lot of CSOs would step up to that table and say, okay, if we're going to move from this business model or motion to that business model or motion, if we're going to stop making X and start making PPE, whatever it is, then we need to make sure that the competencies of and the roles of the people who sell for us are adjusted accordingly. That's happened sometimes. In other cases, I think I've seen enablement be almost overwhelmed with oh my gosh, we need to take a very different tack and our people need to immediately change on the fly in terms of what they're good at, what they're asked to do, the messages that they're delivering, that can become overwhelming, right? I mean, everyone selling everything can only last depending on how many SKUs you can possibly remember, right?
Right. And it's not that, it's not the way it was, right? And so we always see our clients all of a sudden go, oh my gosh, our sellers aren't sellers. We need help, right?
Yeah, for
Is
sure.
what we see a lot of. And so I'm really curious, and I think our audience probably is, about your lesson number 2 on the measurement matters, and will your budget be expanded or reduced? Because I think a lot of people are seeing both of these probably happen within their organizations. And I'd be curious to know what you guys have found out.
Yeah, it's too soon to know specifically within the crisis what's going on with enablement budgets. Most of our guests today have probably seen the content from Heather and my team members that shows dramatic increases in the last 8 years in terms of the percentage of organizations that are increasing their spend on sales enablement. Those data may or may not be out the window. We have to wait and see. We have a lot of very, very strong reactions when we talk to folks about how to measure sales enablement. In a nutshell, our recommendation and what we see high-performing organizations do is to really focus on the leading and leading indicators that an enablement organization can control within their different initiatives, and then to leave those lagging indicators for which they're compensated, but to leave those out of the MBO scenario. That all being said, what do you guys at the top of our organization need me to do right now? Because we're in an unprecedented situation. Is it speeding up onboarding, even though I know that there's possibly a quality decline because of just ramming people through the system faster and faster? Is it to stop the hiring and to start the refreshing of the skills and competencies of our people? So it's a little hard to know what to measure, but obviously the fight for resources, the fight for budget, and most importantly, the fight to ascertain, did we do our job really well, even if that job was redefined on March 12th? That's super important. And it's important to codify that, which means putting it in writing. Although it could change over time, we definitely see a lot of organizations endeavoring to do that with the C-suite.
That's great. And I think, we're seeing also a lot of how quickly are we changing as the sales enablement group within our different customers as well. And I think that's something that they're looking at, now that we're 3 months in, of we were able to move, this quickly to get people what they need to be able to keep continuing, these conversations and the messaging, because a lot of messaging changed overnight as well with everybody.
It really does.
Yeah.
It does. And the national conversations on top of the pandemic have made, fresh, honest communication even more important. More and more enablement organizations are realizing that, especially in big enterprises, Juliana, that thinking about our reps and anybody who we enable, customer facing roles, the revenue enablement concept that's becoming a deal, that treating them as if they were customers, because they are our customers. We work for them, which means that open and honest and quick communication and a little bit of humility where appropriate is actually the best way to externally get your customer to buy and to be loyal to you, and internally get your customer, the enablees, to buy into the things that we want them to do, the things that we ask them to do, because we are asking a lot more of them than we probably ever were before.
And is this to your point on lesson 3 about sellers are the new customers?
Yeah.
And that's, really making sure that we're helping them to help the customers.
It is, yeah. This revenue enablement concept that we and a few other folks have been socializing for about a year and a half basically just speaks to the fact that one of the reasons why enablement is growing and this organization is growing is that it's a very horizontal center of excellence. You can enable not just salespeople, but customer-facing roles. You've got channel partners, you've got sales engineers and overlays and solution engineers, and especially CX and customer engagement folks. And we're seeing a lot of continuity around that. But it means more than ever that thinking about these folks internally as our customers, I mean, it depends where you come from. If we're all in the Sales Enablement Society, most of us have been in and around sales, which means we're pretty obsessed with it, which means we believe everybody in the entire organization works for sales. Probably a little bit of an overreach, but I can't get that out of my blood, so I just roll with it.
That makes sense. And so in our last couple minutes here, competency matters. say a little bit more about that. You mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, this is the thing that's happening with a lot of organizations that are suddenly driving change down to the sales force in response to the massive changes that are happening in their buyers, their markets, their offerings, their competitors, legislation, is suddenly what good looks like for this sales job or that BDR job or that overlay role is different. And more than ever, we find that companies that are getting ahead of this crazy situation are taking the time to refresh and recodify what good looks like for each of the roles that they enable. What are the skills? What are the processes they have to be aware of? What are the knowledge components? It is obviously, with everybody at home, a great opportunity to train and to educate and to adjust the learning. But even that can be over pivoted to the point where it's seen more as a time filler. But definitely we're seeing companies rethink, what does good look like for my roles? It can be very tactical, the lighting and the camera, but it can also be very, very strategic, which is, what does the new relationship building and relationship management look like?
Fantastic. And the last one, which I'm sure everybody's wondering about, because we've done such a huge shift within the last 3 months, if we weren't already there, to technology. So what's the easy peasy versus old dog's new tricks?
I think everybody knows that, right? Just buy some stock in Zoom.
Yeah. Here we are. Yeah.
Oh,
Sure.
seriously, that's literally it.
Yeah, no, I get it. And here we are on a Zoom call, right?
Yeah. I mean, the old dogs and new tricks is actually one of the themes that we still talk to. We have a lot of customers who are not SaaS software providers, right? We have companies that sell paper, and we have a lot of companies with very mature, set in their ways sales organizations and sales team members. And more than ever, I think that this pandemic is teaching us that it's maybe not always okay to let those folks keep doing things the way they've always done it, even if it doesn't follow our norms and our rules, because they kind of hit their number. So just kind of leave them over there, because those folks are getting left out right now.
Yeah, it's really interesting as we navigate this, I think, with the technology, to the point of some of the people in the chat. It is a big shift for some people, and then not as much for others. And it's definitely can be a big shift for some sales groups. And we've seen that with other clients as well.
Agreed. Thank you.
All right. That's a wrap with Peter Ostrow. Thank you so much, Peter, for being with us. And we are going to be handing this over to Lisa Scotto now to do her presentation. And Michael, I'll let you introduce that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, welcoming Lisa Scotto. Lisa's Senior Vice President, Strategic Partnerships at the 4As. And what we're going to be talking about here is, just like Peter was mentioning with Juliana, and the common theme we're all facing, which is, in this pivoting world of the COVID crisis, what are we doing to engage and interact with customers? Lisa's done quite a bit of, she's kind of explored this area in really creative ways I thought would be really interesting for all of us to learn. Innovative behaviors that will help boost virtual event attendance and engagement. Lisa, without further ado, welcome and take it away.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you for having me, and I'm happy to be able to share some of the research that I've been doing over the past few months, and hopefully those online will find this helpful, and I'm happy to answer questions as well. So it's not new news, but with non-essential travel discouraged, social distancing encouraged, and states just dipping their toes in reopening, with obviously mixed results if anybody is watching the news, sales teams still, though, do need to foster relationships, right? How do we take what we may have done before in person and relate that to a virtual world? So during this time, we'll explore some unique solutions at various different price points to facilitate both attendance and engagement. And we can go to the next slide, please. So I actually would like everyone to take a poll right now. So it's super easy. It's not difficult for this Wednesday morning. And I think our technology partners can deploy that poll now. Okay. In a virtual setting, what has been the biggest obstacle to enabling the sales process? Participation, attention, relationship building, ability to surprise and delight, or all of the above? It says that host and panelists can't vote. I'm not sure what that means.
That's okay. We have a lot of our participants voting, so it just means the speakers. We're all set.
Got it. Okay. Great. Okay, so we can close that out and see where we netted out. I have a hunch, but okay, so 32% participation attention, 14 at relationship, 12 ability, and 41%, which was my hunch, all of the above. Excellent. Well, I'm hoping that our next few minutes together will help you with all of the above. So some of these engaging ideas include a virtual background contest, cocktail kits, meal delivery services, and hosting virtual experiences. So we can go to the next slide. You know, and this may seem, you know, maybe funny or super light, but I have seen this work very well. So you can host a virtual background contest. This could be themed. So my virtual background contest here was your favorite beach view or your favorite beach virtual background, but you could apply this to your business, to what you're selling, to your client. You can get really creative with this, and it's very little cost. Obviously the participants, it's no cost to them. The only real cost here is if you did want to get creative and offer a prize for the winner, you know, and that could be a Starbucks gift card, an Amazon gift card, something digitally that you could send them. But obviously it's a great icebreaker when everyone gets on, and can really facilitate some of the conversation that at sometimes when you join a virtual meeting, it can be a bit awkward. So that's host to virtual background. Next slide is all about the virtual happy hour kit. So I came across this as I was crafting some of my sponsorship opportunities at the 4As, and we were really trying to engage some of our virtual, some of our in-person cocktail hour sponsors into virtual sponsors. So, you know, the cocktail kit is great. It includes the tools needed to craft 2 margaritas, 2 Moscow mules, or 2 old fashions at your desk. The participant has to bring the hard stuff, or if they don't drink, they can create a mocktail. You know, there's a couple of interesting ways you can make this interactive. You could actually have people make their cocktail on the virtual Zoom or the virtual meeting. So kind of very Food Network style. Also a very interactive way to kind of break the ice and get people chatting and feeling comfortable and relaxed, if you will. Next slide. So I also did a bunch of research on how we could actually bring a meal to potential participants, which was interesting because you would think that this would be something that was easier. But what I did find was that Grubhub does offer corporate accounts, and you can actually designate how much you'd like to go to the different individuals, and it's emailed to them, so they get emailed essentially a credit, and then they can hop onto Grubhub or Seamless and, you know, choose whatever meal that they would like to have delivered. So it's not quite the same as meeting in person and having a wonderful dinner all together, but it is a pretty good substitute. I will notate that some people are not comfortable eating on video, so this might be something that is more of a, you know, we're offering you this great meal, and maybe folks take you up on it like after the call ends or after the virtual Zoom ends. So just something to keep in mind, that you want to be mindful of people's you know, willingness to eat on camera, if you will. The other great thing with this is you can kind of deem the amount of money you want to give to each participant. So it's totally up to you. You know, I've even seen this work where maybe you do a cheese tray or a cheese plate instead of a full meal. So there's lots of ways you can play with this. I think what I love about a lot of these examples is that you can customize it, or you can get very creative based on what you sell or who your client is. Okay, next slide. So I don't know if you know this, but Airbnb started virtual experiences with all of everything with the quarantine and with COVID. They started a push for virtual experiences. And what's interesting, and I've kind of taken a screenshot here of their site, is they actually have ones that are great for groups. So they have everything on here. I mean, as you can see, they have an Olympic medalist, they have how to learn about mezcal, they have a master class about coffee. So there are tons of different Airbnb virtual events that you could sign up for at various different price points, and if you will, gift to the participants that you'd like to gather around the table. You know, one note is that this is not for 200 people like this call is. This is more for intimate settings, and really if you're trying to build relationships with either close customers or thanking clients, or maybe a cohort of customers that are in the same phase of the funnel. So I think it's a great way to get, very creative with how you're bringing people together. And then next slide, please. So this is also an interesting experience and makes me think of the pre-COVID days of sales gatherings. This particular winery, Justin Winery and Vineyard, started doing virtual wine tastings pretty soon after COVID started. And here's some of their marketing that they've used to advertise it. I love the "Who Needs Handshakes Anyway." I am sure that if you have a favorite vineyard or winery, or if you have a go-to brand that you like, you could call them and they might even do this privately for you. This Justin Winery was actually featured in Advertising Age back in April. And I just think it's a great, very high-end way to, again, bring your participants closer and create some engagement and drive that engagement in a virtual event. And then lastly, there's something that I actually participated in called Palabra Dinner Party. And this is a fairly new company. And essentially it's a thought-provoking dinner inspired by one question for all attendees. So it's based on intimate groups, deep conversation, and real connection. And it's a 2-hour event. It has a third-person moderator, and it also has an artist. And you can see on the slide, The Great Reset. That's the dinner I participated in. And there were 8 of us around the virtual dinner table. And essentially the question that they asked was, share a story of a time when change was thrust on you. How did you come out on the other side, and what helped you along the way? So the artist actually drew, as we were telling each of our stories, so as the 8 of us went through our stories, the artist drew this photo or this picture. And it's a takeaway that you can give participants at the end of the event. This was very, very engaging. And it wasn't your run-of-the-mill, let's hear about XYZ company and let's talk about their benefits and values and such. This was a very thoughtful way to build relationships. I recommend this for companies or organizations that want to thank their current clients that you already have a good relationship with. The types of questions that they ask do warrant some trust and do warrant a lot of engagement. So I do recommend that this is something, not necessarily for prospects, but for clients you want to thank, or you really want to drive deeper relationships with. And finally, the last slide just kind of shares the various different price points as well as the links to each of these different solutions. Michael, will this be shared? Will people have access to this slide with the actual links?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And I would love to say thank you. That is my email. I'm more than happy to entertain questions, to brainstorm. I love working on things like this, and would be happy to help.
Lisa, thank you so much. And before we move on back to Juliana, I just want to say, huge thanks. At a time like this, we do need to get creative. For those of you, who are connecting with what Lisa has presented, imagine this. We talked a lot about clients here and buyers. Obviously, that's the whole end game. But we have to train people to engage buyers better. And when we start thinking about digital selling, virtual selling, whatever name we put on it for our particular situations, these tactics are highly engaging, especially when you want to bring those sales audience to a online training seminar, etc. So I would look at widening the use cases on this a bit to include what sales enablement does, especially in the L&D, the learning and development areas of sales enablement. Have highly engaging methods in place ready for keeping the attention of your audience within the organization. Those frontline quota carriers that are trying to learn behaviors challenged by the fact that they can't any longer be in the field. So Lisa, great story. Thanks for sharing, and great having you on the call.
Thank you.
All right, next up, Juliana, back to you. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Michael. So this is always one of my favorite parts of the call, and something that I was passionate about last year when I was doing the podcast, and so happy that Paul Butterfield's been running forward and making that better and better. But we get a lot of questions about what are our peers doing, and success stories or challenges or things that worked, things that didn't work, of people actually practicing sales enablement. So I am very happy that one of our sections here is one of our members who's the sales enablement practitioner, and she's going to share with us a story about something that she did in her organization. So I am introducing Tanya Aisley. She's the manager of learning and development for global sales enablement at Panasonic Avionics Corporation. Tanya, welcome to the call, and feel free to take it away and tell us your story.
Thank you, Juliana. Happy to be here. So hi everyone, and I want to paint a picture for you quickly what type of the product we're selling. So imagine yourself in one of those passenger seats. When was the last time you flew on board of an aircraft? United, Singapore, Emirates. Chances are you watched a movie on a monitor manufactured in our hardware plant in Osaka, and we're a leading player in in-flight entertainment and connectivity, which means if you are able to access Wi-Fi, it's also us as well. The interactive you click through on your seat back, the internet portal you access running our software. And when your airplane landed in one of the 60 plus locations on the globe, chances are a maintenance technician had to replace the headset you squished between the seats on your flight in the 15 minutes on the ground that A360 was standing there. So our sales teams operate in a highly regulated environment by national aviation authorities, think FAA, selling complex products, not only hardware, but also connectivity, software certifications, content, phone, live TV, training, and turnkey maintenance packages. So here I am to tell you the story. The story continues. So I'm about to tell you the story how one man's vision for a world-class sales enablement organization is becoming reality in the middle of this global crisis we're all living through. And the story starts exactly 1 year ago. The story continues. So 1 year ago, I was in a different part of the organization, not sales. I heard that we were embarking on a Mila Hyman adoption journey and shared my excitement with the sales leadership. This is how I met the director of global sales enablement, who told me, I see you're passionate about learning with background in sales. Why don't you want to join our strategy session? We're building the sales enablement department from the ground up. So him and I, with markers in our hands, whiteboarding the type of the sales organization we want to become, and me still part of this organization dealing with the aircraft maintenance side that I spoke about. So we're sketching the pain points of the account managers on the whiteboard, him and I talking the most. I wasn't even in sales, and the story continues. We used Mila Hyman's Salesforce enablement clarity model to put together a 4-pillar sales enablement strategy. So learning and development was this facet of it, the green one on the diamond. And then we said, why don't we put all of this great brainstorming ideas on the whiteboard on paper? We came out with a 16 pages document. He gave me the framework. I colored it with L&D crayon and put a bow tie of a learning theory. And then we socialize it across the organization. So again, remember, we don't have a sales enablement yet. He is the only director that bringing this vision to the company. And share the vision with our target audience. Ask the account managers at 1 a.m. to help me build future testimonials, the last section. Wanted to engage our target audience in the process from the very beginning. So what do you think was in the next steps? Next steps was bringing the right crew on board, hiring myself as a manager of learning and development. And I was the first proof how the clear vision becomes a reality. So the story continues. Oh, remember the strategy meeting I told you about? So next Monday, I was at my technical services director's office thinking I'm gonna get fired, being asked, do you wanna move to sales? And have you ever had an opportunity to write your own GD? Here on the right was pretty easy. I already had the whole strategy document put together, so the vision was very clear. We knew what we were gonna do. We weren't sure we're gonna have a team to do this, so try to make the job of manager sales learning development so wide and broad, yet so deep from the high level strategic responsibilities to all the ground level tactical execution. And plan for the worst. You never know what's gonna come your way, and the plan B actually rolled out, trying to crowdsource and think about what are the topics for sales that we need to basically recruit people in the organization that can be our subject matter experts for the future sales enablement program we're gonna run with. And we were looking to hire more people, and the story continues. Had great big hopes. I know every step I'm gonna take. First week in the new role, the GD got approved position with this clear strategy document. Detailed sales enablement strategy was not a piece of cake, but it did go through even with the hiring freeze, and our sales enablement function was basically starting up. Here we are in December last year, right before the crisis hit, communicating our clear sales enablement strategy during global sales meeting to all our regional leaders who came to Lake Forest from across the world, inspired with our drive and very high level of detail in the 16-page document. The sales leaders committed to our game plan. Have you ever started your sales enablement with 100% completed global needs analysis? The story continues. So the QR code they scanned on that strategy document, and I can share all of these resources later as templates, took them to the sample survey, 76 questions across 7 different categories, sales competencies from financial acumen to customer satisfaction, product knowledge, sales skills. They were sold because they saw it in action, what their direct reports gonna see when they complete the self-evaluation. We got their buy-in. We achieved 100% completion rate in 4 weeks. Have you ever had a survey that everyone responds to except one member? So February created a heat maps that you see on the right, mapped out for individual sales manager how the team looks like it compiled. So the top gaps were chosen, and we knew exactly the gaps we need to close. With the limited resources, we had to prioritize the effort. So decided, the story continues. Decided in March, continue execution in the middle of major Salesforce rollout, Mila Hyman adoption ongoing. We decided to start with a coaching initiative, trying to close these gaps using the internal expertise we had already when the global crisis hits. And the story continues. Here we are, April, May, June, frozen budgets, corporate standstill. But thanks to our clear strategy, we are rolling out a number of programs and rebranded our coaching initiative into Sapio Sellers, trying to leverage virtual environment for the sales book club, but we tie it back to the global needs analysis and the gaps and the skills that we want our sales people to have in the new changing world, and modeling this behavior of a very high level interactive virtual environment to do the relationship building, teaching them to do relationship building online without them really realizing that. So with the great support from our regional VP of Sales, Americas Oceania region, right now we're rolling out the Sapio Sellers Book Club to all of the regions across, creating a buzz. And this is how our Sapio Sellers learning and development community basically builds that new dynamics of the virtual communication across the org. And that's how our sales enablement vision, so clearly articulated 1 year ago, is coming together. And the story continues.
That is quite the story, Tanya. Thank you for sharing. And there was so much information in that short amount of time. I'm curious if you could just share with everybody your LinkedIn profile or something in the chat so that they can connect with you. I think there's probably a lot of details in there and a lot of work that went into that.
Absolutely.
I have questions about after this and outside of the 10-minute run through.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Tanya, thank you so much. And one other thing I'd like to ask is, I'd love to follow your story. Maybe have you back, on a future call. I'd love to see how you leverage this community in your own professional development. I think that's going to be key. There's so much brain share here. As you're talking, you probably can't see. There's a lot happening in the chat. I saw someone, I think it was Morton, that said, fantastic, this is inspiring. There's some other comments that are supporting what you're doing. And that, it opens up these cross-border relationships, give you so much diversity in the way that we, think as a community. It could help you with your professional development, and you can help us. So we'd love to continue following your story, and thank you again for sharing.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Okay, next up, our dear friends who've been around since day one. We're excited to welcome Bryan Ehrenfreund and Chip Day, who head up think of Chip and Bryan as our global chapter liaisons. They are the folks behind the scenes helping us, making sure that our chapters are running smoothly, that they are running effectively, and that people understand how to engage chapters. How do you stand up a chapter? How do you become a chapter president? What does that even look like? And in front of the scene, you'll see these gentlemen often at our conferences. Everyone knows them. They have been highly engaging, highly interacting with chapters across the globe. And I'd like to say, because of them, we have grown from just a few country chapters 2 years ago to today we have 29. And that's pretty celebratory. So without further ado, Bryan, Chip, welcome to the call. Please take it away.
Super. Thank you so much, Michael, for that introduction. Really do appreciate it. As Michael mentioned, Chip and I are joining you today as your global chapter liaisons. We also serve as the co-leaders of the Greater Phoenix, Arizona chapter as well. So from a chapter leader perspective, we really understand, we walk in your shoes and we really understand it. And we're both very excited to join the call today. Wanted to give you a quick update with all the activities that have been going on. I know that I'm standing between you and getting on with your day, so this will be really, really quick. First, let me, as Michael was just talking, what does it mean that we're your chapter liaisons? Really, as we've continued with this exponential growth, adding new chapters, Chip and I recognize as chapter leaders, like many of you that are on the call today, needed some ongoing support. We needed onboarding for new chapters. So just about a year ago, the board was nice enough to, we're all volunteers here and we volunteered for this, but we're nice enough to give us the reins of running the global chapter community. And I got to tell you, speaking on behalf of Chip and I, we get, if not more, at least as much doing it, speaking with such wonderful members and leaders and practitioners and vendors throughout the world. And we couldn't be more excited to do that. So it's our pleasure. As you see here, and as it's been said a few times now, we've had this exponential growth, 59 chapters across 29 some odd countries. And this year alone, we've added chapters in Spain, Bulgaria, Denmark. I heard, Morton was mentioned before. He's been great to work with. Montreal. We've relaunched Atlanta and Chicago, and we have some new leadership coming in on DC and New York City as well. So again, on behalf of myself, Chip, and the entire board, we really want to thank all the chapter leaders. We know the time and attention that you put into this to really advance and elevate the role of sales enablement, which is our mission. Next slide, please. I want to segue just a couple of kind of housekeeping things for the chapter leaders. Just so you know, we've created a dedicated page for chapter leaders on the SES website. If you haven't gone to it, please do so. at your place for, for really, all updates, anything you need. For instance, we've implemented quarterly chapter leader calls. Myself and Chip have done that. Our next call is coming up on September 8th, as you see there. It's really the place really to find everything related to, to the chapters. In the spirit of information sharing, we also, one of the things that Chip and I have heard from you all is, a lot of us were reinventing the wheel. Can we share? So we created a library, as you see on the right side of the screen there. Please update, and you see the last presentation from our virtual meeting here in Phoenix that I posted. Please, chapter leaders, post your materials. Let's share amongst ourselves and share, and that's really key. We've also recently created a new process for posting your local events on the website. If you hadn't seen that, that's posted on the SES website, which you can find along in the discussion area. There's a new document for roles and responsibilities. So take a look at all that. If you have any questions, obviously reach out to Chip and I. Next slide, please. Speaking of reaching out to Chip and I, there's our contact information. We're here for you. If you need help within an existing chapter, or if there is not a chapter in your local community, feel free to reach out to either Chip or I. We're more than happy to help and work with you, coach and counsel you on basically how to stand up a chapter in your city. And with that said, I'll throw it back to Michael.
Bryan, thank you so much. Just one quick question for you. If someone has a desire to stand up a chapter and they're in a region where there are cities nearby, or a city that has a chapter nearby, for example, in South Florida, when we stood up our chapter presidency in South Florida, there was a chapter in Central Florida, which is about 2.5 hours away. Is it, and just doing a quick, sort of trivia here, or some just a tip and trick, is it easier to stand up, or is it acceptable to stand up a chapter, wherever you want, or are there some limitations to ensure continuity in that particular, geography?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say we're pretty flexible, knowing Florida as I do, living there for several years, as you do as well, Michael. Central Florida, no one's going to commute down to Boca or Miami for a meeting, right? So it really has to do with geography. So having a chapter in Central Florida is absolutely acceptable. I'm originally from New York. I mean, having a chapter, I know in New York City, we hear a lot, those in the tri-state area, New Jersey, Connecticut, Long Island, it's tough to get to unless you work in the city. So, think of lighting up chapters in those, individual areas. But like I said, we're flexible. One of the things I will mention, what we do is we go into the database and we look at who has signed up already in that city or that area right from the start. And we help the chapter leaders basically jumpstart their chapter by looking who's already there that doesn't have an affiliation with an existing chapter. So that's just an idea as well.
Excellent. I appreciate that. Yeah, there was a question that came in one time that said, hey, you're in, north area of Palm Beach and I'm in Miami. Could we have a Miami chapter and you guys have a West Palm chapter? And, there was an early debate. This is going back a couple of years. We just said, let's just have a South Florida chapter. And that comes up from time to time. So thank you again, Bryan and Chip, for all the work that you guys do. Bravo to all of the success that you have helped us create. Okay, so let me, some closing thoughts I think are important. Number one, if you're not already a member, hopefully, and I'm looking at the poll, a lot of you felt that this call was exciting. There's so much more that we share as an organization outside of this call. We have webinars, podcasts, as you've learned. Our conference, which is normally an in-person event, will for the very first time be virtual this year in September. I encourage everyone from around the world to attend, tell your colleagues, your friends. We'll continue to raise awareness. And if you're not already a member, become a member. It's free, and it's a way for you to get connected. And we inspire volunteering because that's what really drives the organization. Every one of us on this call does not get a paycheck. We are a nonprofit organization. And that is really that's our difference. when I say become a member, when in the bit below this little quote, it says why, we're the only non-profit global organization dedicated to this profession. There isn't another one like this, and certainly not at our size. So we hope you join us. Here's some links. You'll get a replay. You'll also get these slides after the call. Monica and Justin from our team will send out some notes shortly. And if you have any questions for any one of the board members or our board of advisors, everyone is accessible. Connect with us on LinkedIn. If you have a story to share, as Tanya Aisley did, if you're a member and you have if we can learn about your professional growth, which often gives us indication of how the profession itself is changing, reach out to me, or we'll also send out a form that you can request to become a speaker. We, the other areas of this call, our member spotlight, our interview that you heard Peter Ostrow from Forrester, those are also opportunities. If you're an analyst or if you're in academia, that interview spot that Peter took is usually dedicated to those disciplines. If you have a really cool how-to story, that's the focus of the member spotlight that Lisa shared with us. Monica from our team will send out a link that you can request to participate on this call. And we will, if we respond back, because we get a lot of requests, that means that that we're considering that content. If not, we'll certainly put you in queue for other calls in the future. Okay, everyone, thank you so much. I really appreciate your attendance, your participation. Thank you to all of our speakers today. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Be safe, and we will see you again in a couple of months on our next call. Thanks so much.